The soft blue glow of the quantum communication array cast dancing shadows across Naya Reeves' face. As she processed the final batch of diplomatic messages from Earth's orbital communication hub, her fingers moved with practiced efficiency across the holographic interface, routing farewell transmissions to 1,000 worlds, each one carrying the weight of humanity's quiet departure from galactic civilization. 28 years old, with dark hair that she constantly tucked behind her ears when concentrating, Naya had spent the last decade as Earth's primary linguistic liaison. She spoke 17 alien languages fluently and understood fragments of dozens more. Her small office, suspended in the zero-gravity section of the station, had become humanity's voice to the galaxy, and now its final goodbye, the evacuation order, had come through 6 hours earlier. All human personnel were to abandon their posts within 48 hours. No explanations, no protests, no negotiations. Just a quiet, dignified withdrawal from a civilization that had never truly welcomed them as equals. Another day, another diplomatic disaster to clean up, she murmured to herself, using the phrase that had become her bitter mantra over the years. Her current task was closing communication channels that had taken decades to establish, severing connections that had been her life's work. The soft chime of an incoming priority message interrupted her melancholy. The sender's identification made her pause. jorik.valen@nexari.linguistics.net. Personal encryption, not official diplomatic channels. Naya hesitated before opening the message. She had been corresponding with Jorik Valen for almost 8 years, ever since the Great Translation Project that had helped establish trade protocols between human and Nexari worlds. Their exchanges had always been professional, discussions of linguistic structures, cultural interpretation challenges, academic papers on xenolinguistic theory. But lately, something had changed in their communications. Small personal details had begun creeping into their technical discussions, jokes that weren't quite professional, questions about her life outside of work, a warmth that made her look forward to his messages in a way that felt dangerous for someone she had never met in person. The message opened, and Naya's breath caught. As she read, Naya, rumors are spreading through the linguistics network about humanity's withdrawal. Please tell me they're not true. Please tell me you're not leaving us. The galaxy's communication systems are already showing strain. Your people's linguistic protocols hold together more than you realize. But more than that, I need to know you're still out there. Your messages have been the brightest part of my research days for years. I think I've been falling in love with your mind through our correspondence, and now I'm terrified I'll never get the chance to tell you in person. Jorik. Naya stared at the words, her heart racing. In 8 years of professional correspondence, Jorik had never mentioned anything personal about himself beyond his work. She knew he was a linguistic researcher on the Nexari homeworld, that he had contributed groundbreaking research on cross-species communication patterns, that his insights had helped her solve countless translation challenges, but she had never known he was falling in love with her through their messages, just as she had been falling in love with his brilliant mind, his gentle humor, his unique way of seeing connections between different languages that others missed. She looked around her small office at the personal items she had already packed, photos of Earth, her collection of linguistic texts, the small crystal gift that Jorik had sent her 2 years ago, after they successfully decoded the ancient Vorthic communication protocols together. She had treasured that gift, though she had never told him how much it meant to her. Her hands trembled slightly as she began composing her response. Jorik, the rumors are true. Humanity is leaving the galaxy within the next 48 hours. I'm currently shutting down communication networks and preparing for evacuation. I want you to know that these 8 years of correspondence have been the most intellectually stimulating and personally meaningful of my career. You've challenged me, inspired me, and somewhere along the way, you became more than just a colleague. I've been saving every message you've sent, reading them over when the diplomatic failures got too discouraging. Your mind is beautiful, Jorik. I wish we had time to explore what this connection between us might have become. She paused, knowing that this might be their final exchange, then added, the galaxy is losing more than it knows when humanity leaves. But perhaps most painful for me is that I'm losing the chance to meet the person who has unknowingly kept my faith in cross-species understanding alive through some very dark times. I hope you'll remember me kindly when the communication networks fall silent. With all my affection, Naya. As she sent the message, Naya felt a piece of her heart breaking. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, traveling at impossible speeds toward an unknown future, she would carry the memory of a love that had bloomed in the spaces between words, across distances measured in light years, between minds that had never touched but had somehow found each other anyway. The evacuation alarms began sounding throughout the station. Time was running out for humanity's last conversations with the galaxy they were leaving behind. The communication center on Nexari Prime had never been quiet before. Jorik Valen stood in the observation deck overlooking the main operations floor, watching his colleagues struggle with systems that had worked flawlessly for decades. Banks of quantum communicators flickered with error messages, their harmonious blue glow now interrupted by harsh red warnings that spoke of cascading failures. Throughout the galactic network, 3 months had passed since humanity's departure, and the galaxy was learning a painful lesson about interdependence. Jorik ran his pale fingers through his silver hair, a nervous habit that had developed since receiving Naya's final message. Her words were memorized now, carved into his mind like ancient scripture. Your mind is beautiful. Jorik, I wish we had time to explore what this connection between us might have become. Status report. He called down to the operations floor, though he already knew what the answer would be. Technical specialist Vera Thane looked up from her console, her usually pristine appearance disheveled from days of futile repairs. Sector 7 is completely dark now. The translation protocols for the Cytherian trade networks have collapsed entirely. Without the human linguistic bridges, their mathematical language system can't interface with our phonetic structures. Jorik nodded grimly. He had been documenting these failures obsessively, not just as part of his job, but because each breakdown felt like losing another piece of Naya. The communication network she had helped build, the translation protocols she had refined, the elegant solutions she had crafted for seemingly impossible linguistic problems. All of it was falling apart without her brilliant mind to maintain it. What about the deep space monitoring arrays? He asked, though this question carried personal weight that his colleagues couldn't understand. Still functional, but barely, replied communications engineer Marcus Kell. The human-designed amplification systems are starting to show stress fractures. Why? Are we expecting signals from beyond the galactic rim? Jorik didn't answer directly. For the past month, he had been using his security clearance to redirect small amounts of power from the deep space, raised toward a personal project that consumed his every free moment. He was broadcasting messages into the void between galaxies. Messages addressed to a woman who was traveling toward stars so distant. That light itself took years to bridge the gap. I'll be in Research Lab 7, he announced, leaving the chaos of the main operations center behind. Lab 7 had become his sanctuary and his obsession. Banks of modified equipment hummed quietly as they boosted his personal messages to power levels that violated several energy conservation protocols. The walls were covered with charts showing humanity's probable trajectory, calculations of signal propagation delays, and transcripts of every message he had ever exchanged with Naya. He sat down at his personal terminal and began composing another transmission into the darkness. Naya, this is message 47. I don't know if any of these are reaching you, or if they ever will. The communication networks are failing faster than we anticipated. Your people didn't just participate in our galactic civilization. You held it together in ways none of us understood. I've been analyzing the breakdown patterns, trying to understand how your linguistic protocols worked. It's like watching a master craftsman's work fall apart and realizing how intricate the original construction was. Your translation algorithms didn't just convert words between languages. They created understanding between minds that think in fundamentally different ways. He paused, staring at the blinking cursor. These scientific observations were easier to write than the personal truth that kept him awake at night. I miss our conversations, Naya, not just the professional collaboration. Though that was extraordinary, I miss the way your mind worked, the unexpected connections you made between concepts that seemed unrelated. I miss the small jokes you would embed in technical reports, the way you would challenge my assumptions while still being kind about it. I've been thinking about something you wrote in one of your early messages years ago. You said that language wasn't just about communication. It was about building bridges between different ways of experiencing reality. I didn't fully understand what you meant then, but I do now. You weren't just translating words, Naya. You were translating hope through the lab's viewport. Jorik could see the lights of Nexari Prime stretching to the horizon. Millions of his people going about their daily lives, most of them unaware that their communication systems were slowly dying, that the galaxy was fragmenting into isolated pockets of incomprehension. The Nexari Science Council has asked me to head a project to recreate human translation protocols. They don't understand that it's impossible. Your methods weren't just technical. They were intuitive, creative, emotional. They came from a mind that could feel empathy across species boundaries, that could imagine what it was like to think in completely alien patterns. I volunteered for the project anyway, because working on it makes me feel closer to you. Every algorithm I analyze, every protocol I try to reverse engineer. It's like having a conversation with your ghost. It's not enough, but it's all I have. Jorik sealed the message and fed it into the deep space ray. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, traveling at speeds that defied imagination, Naya Reeves continued her journey toward an unknown future. Whether she would ever hear his voice calling across the void remained a mystery locked in the silence between stars, but he would keep broadcasting, keep hoping, keep trying to bridge the impossible distance between his broken heart and hers. 2 years into humanity's journey between galaxies, Naya Reeves had almost given up hope. The colony ship New Horizon drifted through the cosmic void at velocities that bent space itself, carrying 50,000 humans toward the Andromeda Galaxy. In the ship's communication center, she maintained the long-range sensors more out of habit than expectation. No signal could reach them here, in the emptiness between spiral arms where even starlight was just a memory. Then the impossible happened. Naya, you need to hear this, called Technical Officer Ben Torres from the primary sensor ray. His voice carried an excitement she hadn't heard in months. I'm picking up something on the deep space frequencies. It's definitely artificial. And it's addressing you by name. Naya's hands trembled as she rushed to the console. The signal was impossibly faint. A whisper carried across distances that should have made communication impossible. But there it was, threading through the cosmic background radiation like a voice calling through a storm. This is message 218. I don't know if you're receiving these transmissions, but I can't stop sending them. The galaxy is falling apart without humanity's linguistic bridges. But more than that, I'm falling apart without the hope of hearing from you again, Jorik. She whispered, her eyes filling with tears. After 2 years of silence, his voice reached across the impossible void between galaxies, carrying with it all the longing she had tried to bury in her work. She worked frantically to boost the signal, routing power from non-essential systems to clean up the transmission. As the static cleared, Jorik's words became more distinct, each one a precious gift delivered from the ruins of the civilization they had left behind. I've modified our deep space arrays to broadcast at power levels that violate every safety protocol. Half the Nexari Science Council thinks I've lost my mind, dedicating our resources to messages that may never reach their destination. But I think they understand, in their way. Love makes us do impossible things. Naya's fingers flew across the communication controls, calculating signal delays and transmission windows. If Jorik's message had taken 18 months to reach them, her response would take just as long to reach him. They weren't having a conversation. They were exchanging love letters across time itself. She began composing her reply, her heart racing with the possibility of connection. Jorik, your messages are reaching me. I've received fragments of 47 transmissions over the past 3 months. The signal degrades terribly across intergalactic distances, but your voice is unmistakable. I've been listening to them every night before sleep, playing back the pieces I can salvage, trying to reconstruct your words like archaeological fragments of hope. I need you to know that leaving wasn't easy for any of us, but leaving you was. The hardest part. These 2 years of silence have been filled with imaginary conversations with you. I've been working on linguistic projects aboard the colony ship, and I catch myself wanting to share discoveries with you, to argue theory with you, to hear your laugh when I make those terrible puns you pretended not to find amusing. She paused, looking out the viewport at the star-speckled darkness that separated them. Somewhere in that void, light carried her words at the speed of cosmic law, racing toward a mind she loved but had never touched. You asked in message 31 whether I think about alternative timelines where we met in person. Before the evacuation, I think about it constantly. I imagine meeting you at one of those academic conferences we discussed, finally putting a face to the brilliant mind I knew through years of correspondence. I imagine what your laugh sounds like, how your hands move when you're excited about a linguistic discovery, whether you drink your tea to hot like I do, but mostly, I imagine what it would have been like to love you without the weight of impossible distance, to build something together instead of mourning what we never had the chance to create. Torres called out from across the communications center. Naya, I'm detecting another transmission cluster. Looks like he's been broadcasting multiple messages daily. She smiled through her tears. Of course he had. Jorek's methodical nature would demand systematic communication attempts, each message carefully crafted and preserved in case one found its way across the void. I'm going to try to establish a regular communication window, she continued typing. If my calculations are correct, you should receive this message approximately 14 months from now. I'll broadcast every day at these coordinates, at this time, even if the delays mean we're having conversations separated by years. It's better than silence. I love you, Jorek Valen. I love your mind, your persistence, your refusal to let impossible odds stop you from trying. I love that you've spent 2 years shouting my name into the darkness. Between galaxies, when we reach Andromeda, when humanity builds new homes among alien stars, I'll carry your voice with me as proof that some connections transcend distance, time, and the failures of civilizations. Keep broadcasting, my dearest friend. Keep believing that love can bridge any gap. I'll be listening. As she sent the message into the void, Naya felt something she hadn't experienced. Since leaving the Milky Way, she felt connected, not just to Jorek, but to the possibility that their love story might have chapters yet to be written among the stars. The emergency meeting aboard the New Horizon had been called at 0300 ship time, when most of the colony's 50,000 residents were asleep. Naya sat at the curved conference table in the ship's administrative center, watching colony administrator Diana Walsh pace before the large viewport that showed the approaching glow of the Andromeda galaxy. The long-range communications array is consuming 17% of our ship's power reserves, Walsh announced, her voice tight with barely controlled frustration. 17%, Reeves. That's enough energy to support life systems for 3,000 people. Naya kept her expression neutral, though her heart was pounding. For the past year, she had been using increasingly creative methods to boost signal strength for her communications with Jorek, as their correspondence had deepened into something that sustained her through the endless darkness of intergalactic space. She had quietly redirected resources to maintain their connection. The communications are serving a vital purpose, Naya replied carefully. We're maintaining diplomatic contact with our galaxy of origin. That intelligence could be crucial for humanity's future. Diplomatic contact. Walsh's laugh was bitter. You're having love. Letters delivered across 18 months of spacetime with an alien who represents the civilization that rejected us. Meanwhile, our colonial preparation projects are behind schedule because you're too busy composing poetry to focus on your actual job. The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. Naya's work on establishing communication protocols for their new galaxy had suffered as she poured her emotional energy into her impossible relationship with Jorek. But the connection they had built felt more real than anything else in her life. What are you asking me to do? Naya asked quietly. Cut the transmissions. All of them. We need that power for essential systems as we approach our destination. And we need you focused on the future, not the past. Meanwhile, 6 months earlier, in galactic time, Jorik faced his own impossible choice in the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's greatest communication hub. The Nexari Science Council had called an emergency session as reports flooded in of complete communication breakdowns across 17 sectors. Council leader Thyvan stood before the assembled scientists and engineers. Her silver skin darkened with stress patterns. The situation has become critical. Without functional translation protocols, we've lost contact with 47 species. Trade has collapsed. Territorial disputes are escalating into wars, and our entire civilization is fragmenting into isolated pockets. Jorik listened with growing dread, knowing where this conversation was leading. The Deep Space Communication Project has been consuming resources we can no longer spare. Thyvan continued, her gaze fixed on Jorik. We need every available scientist working on immediate solutions, not impossible romantic gestures. The project has provided valuable data on long-range communication possibilities. Jorik protested. The techniques we've developed could be crucial for future deep space exploration. Could be. Thyvan emphasized. Meanwhile, our present civilization is dying. Linguistic specialist Valen, you are hereby assigned to lead Project Reconstruction, an attempt to recreate human translation protocols. This assignment takes priority over all personal projects. Jorik felt the walls closing in around him. And if I refuse, then you'll be stripped of your research credentials and assigned to basic maintenance duties. The choice is yours, but understand that the Nexari people need solutions, not dreams. Back aboard the New Horizon, Naya stared at the message that had arrived through their quantum communication link. Jorik's words, transmitted 18 months earlier, carried a weight that made her chest ache. Naya, they're shutting down my access to the deep space rays. This may be my final transmission for some time. The galaxy is falling apart faster than anyone anticipated. Entire species have gone silent. Wars are breaking out over communication failures, and they need every resource focused on immediate survival rather than impossible love stories. But before they silence me, I need you to know something. I volunteered for a mission that terrifies me. A one-way journey to try to reach your colony's ship using experimental faster-than-light technology. The science is untested, the risks are enormous, and the chances of survival are minimal. But the possibility of holding you, of speaking to you, without years of delay between my words and your response, makes even impossible odds seem worth taking. I know this is madness. I know you might tell me not to risk everything for a love built on delayed messages and shared dreams, but I also know that some connections transcend logic, distance, and the disapproval of entire civilizations. If this message reaches you, know that I'm coming, somehow. Across impossible distances and against all odds, I'm coming to find you among the stars. Naya read the message 3 times before the full implications hit her. Jorik was planning to abandon everything, his world, his people, his life, to chase a love that existed primarily in the spaces between transmitted words. She looked around the conference room at the faces of her fellow colonists, people who had already sacrificed everything to build a new life among alien stars. They deserved her full attention, her complete commitment to their shared future. But somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, racing toward them at speeds that defied physics, Jorik Valen was risking his life for love. The choice between worlds had never felt more impossible. 1 year later, Naya stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station, humanity's first permanent settlement in the Andromeda Galaxy. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, she could see the construction crews working on the colony's expansion, their movements graceful in the station's carefully maintained artificial gravity. But her attention was focused on something far more precious. Jorik's hands as he worked at a translation console, his silver hair catching the light of Andromeda's unfamiliar stars. He had arrived 6 months ago in a ship that should have been impossible. The experimental faster-than-light drive had worked, barely, delivering one badly damaged Nexari vessel and its single passenger to humanity's new home. Jorik had been unconscious for 3 weeks after the journey, his body struggling to recover from the temporal distortions of traveling between galaxies at speeds that bent spacetime itself. The Kepler linguistic protocols are almost complete, he said without looking up from his work. Even after months together, Naya still felt a thrill at hearing his voice. Without the 18-month delay of their intergalactic correspondence, once we establish communication with the indigenous species of this galaxy, we can begin proper first contact procedures. Naya moved to stand beside him, their shoulders touching in the casual intimacy that had developed since his arrival. The reality of physical presence still amazed her after years of loving someone. Through delayed transmissions and imagined conversations, "You know," she said softly, "when I first read your messages about coming here, I thought it was the most romantic and terrifying thing anyone had ever done for love. Now I think it might have been the most practical decision either of us ever made." Jorok looked up from his console, violet eyes warm with the contentment that had slowly replaced the desperate longing of their separation years. "Practical? We're building something here that neither of our original civilizations could imagine." Naya gestured toward the viewport where human and Nexari engineers worked side by side. A society based on cooperation instead of hierarchy, on shared curiosity instead of territorial fear. Through the viewport, they could see the fruits of their collaboration. The first joint human-Nexari colony was taking shape around New Haven Station. Architectural styles that blended the flowing curves of Nexari design with the geometric precision of human engineering. Gardens where earth plants grew alongside Nexari bioluminescent flora, creating beauty that neither species could have achieved alone. The soft chime of an incoming transmission interrupted their moment. Naya activated the communication array, expecting another report from the outer system surveys. Instead, the familiar harmonic patterns of long-range quantum communication filled the air. "It's from the Milky Way," Jorok said, his voice tight with sudden tension. "Multiple sources, broadcasting on emergency frequencies." The message resolved into coherent audio, carrying voices from their abandoned galaxy. "This is Elder Mythe of the Crystalline Collective, broadcasting to any human vessels in the Andromeda Galaxy. The galactic communication networks have completely collapsed. 17 species have gone extinct due to inability to coordinate disaster relief. Wars rage across 40 sectors because diplomatic protocols have broken down entirely. We were wrong to let you leave. We humbly request permission to send a delegation to your new territory, not to demand your return, but to learn from what you're building among the stars." More messages followed, the thermal hegemony asking for guidance on recreating translation protocols, the infinite gardens seeking advice on preventing the ecological disasters that had begun spreading. Without human environmental expertise, species after species acknowledging that humanity's departure had revealed crucial dependencies they had never recognized. "They want to come here," Naya whispered, overwhelmed by the implications. "They want to abandon the old galaxy and start over in Andromeda." Jorok was quiet for a long moment, his hands still on the translation console. "What do you think we should tell them?" Naya looked around the observation deck at the colony they were building together. Through the viewports, she could see the first children born in Andromeda, human and Nexari youngsters playing together in the station's recreational areas, growing up bilingual in ways their parents never could have imagined. "We tell them the truth," she said finally, "that this isn't a place for those who want to recreate the old systems with themselves in charge. This is a place for beings who want to build something entirely new, based on the radical idea that different perspectives make us stronger instead of more dangerous." She activated the response transmitter, her voice carrying back across the void between galaxies. "This is New Haven Colony in the Andromeda Galaxy. We welcome any species ready to abandon the hierarchies that failed our original civilization. But understand that coming here means leaving behind the assumption that some beings are more worthy than others. It means building a society where curiosity matters more than tradition, where cooperation replaces competition, where love can bridge any difference." As her words began their long journey back to the Milky Way, Naya felt Jorok's hand find hers. Their love story had become something larger than either of them had imagined, not just a romance that spanned galaxies, but the foundation stone of a civilization built on the belief that connection could triumph over separation, that hope could overcome fear, that two beings willing to risk everything for each other might just change the universe in the process. Outside the viewport, the first ships from other Milky Way species were already visible as distant points of light, racing toward Andromeda and the promise of a better tomorrow built on love's endless possibility.